Bird, 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 bird. Get him. Yeah! Ron Babe was right. Ron Babe was right.
I'm feeling spry. Hey everybody, it's Ron Bain with the Hunting Dog Podcast. It is the 12th of March. How the hell are you? What are you doing? Where are you going? Where are you off-roading? Where are you in the backcountry? Where are you hunting? Where are you turkey hunting? Where are you mushroom hunting? Well, wherever you're doing any of those things, our title sponsor, OnX Hunt, will help you get there. It's like there's millions of us now. So join OnX Hunt. It's the number one hunting GPS app. I like the fact that it's still considered the number one hunting GPS app, but I'm telling you what, everybody from surfboarders to fishermen to golfers to real estate agents to loggers, everybody uses it. You should give it a whirl. You can get 20% off with the code HDP20 just by listening to this podcast. You don't even have to be a Patreon, which is my next biggest sponsor, of course, but OnX Maps is our title sponsor. They get us where we need to be. They get you where you need to be. And I heard a rumor that they are going to have a brewery layer coming on for craft brews. That's right, because you know when we travel, we like to go to a craft brewery. I do drink a lot of Miller Lite. Everybody knows that about me. But I started to like these wheat beers and these dark beers. Not Guinness-y dark, but like Bingo Brown out of Richmond, that kind of stuff. So I'm personally leading the campaign. I don't know if it'll fall on deaf ears, but just think about it. If your OnX Hunt Map app you turned it on and you did like a 10-mile square where you're hunting, and then there was this little beer mug emblem, you would know that was a good bar that had some craft beer. I don't know. I'm gonna bring it up at the next board meeting. But until then, use your OnX Hunt Map to do everything else. Wear your Pike gear while you're doing it. And you know what's nice about Pike gear? I wear it all the time. I wear the pants basically every day of the year, and it's because they don't really jump out and say camo. You know, they're just comfortable, just like their shirts, their vests, everything they have at Pike gear, technical clothing for the upland hunter. It's a perfect match. It is. Just like Boss shot shells are a perfect match for whatever gun you shoot. I don't care if it's a pump. I don't care if it's a side-by-side. I don't care if it's a single shot, bolt action. And yes, used to be bolt action shotguns. Nobody liked them. They made a lot of them. Everybody got stuck with one for their first gun back in my day. But Boss Shot Shells makes a shot shell for you that's copper-plated bismuth. And don't forget, we're going to have a Boss Shot Shell Festival. I'm calling it Festival. I don't know what it's going to be called yet, but that's coming up in June. Stay tuned for that. In the meantime, I just took out some more pheasant I got in South Dakota. I got my Walton seasonings on it. I'm going to make another version of schnitzel. That's not easy to say, schnitzel. And I'm using my Walton spices. If you don't have, at a minimum, some Walton spices in your kitchen, you don't really have an outdoor kitchen like I do. If you don't have your gunnel, see, I'm not stopping. No, we're at like 3 minutes, and I got to get through this. If you don't have your gunner kennel in the truck right now, that means you're probably not planning on doing anything. But when you do, you want to put your dog in the safest, strongest, crash-proofest kennel that there is, okay? And you can put your Purina food in the best damn food crate that was ever made. That thing is basically grizzly bear proof. Not that you'd ever catch me hunting grizzly bear or in grizzly bear country again with my dogs. But if that happened, the gunner kennel food crate has a locking latch. It's like hermetically sealed. If you had to put something in there like a time capsule, you could put the time capsule objects in the gunner kennel, seal it, put the locking pin through the handle, bury it, and your kids could, unbury it in 20 years or 30 years, and they could still use the food crate and then find out everything you put in there. Boy, that is a stretch, isn't it? You couldn't do that with your Garmin. Now what you could do is you could take one of your Garmin TT15 collars, you could put it in that Gunner Kennel food crate that you buried in the backyard, but the battery's not going to last that long. But I'll guarantee you, when you take it out of there, you could charge it back up. That TT15 will work. And who knows what collar they'll have in 20 years. They'll probably have one that tracks your dog, everywhere. Well, actually, all Garmin products track your dog everywhere. The Alphas, the Astros, the 550 pluses. You can't get better peace of mind for your dog or better training equipment for your dog than a Garmin. You just can't. You can't. And if you can't figure out who I'm going to talk about next, and you haven't been listening and you've been skipping these intros, which I suggest you don't do for this one, go to W Hunting Supply when you're looking for your next Garmin collar or Garmin transmitter. They are the number one distributor in the universe. Actually, in the Milky Way system. And I just got that data the other day. So go to W Hunting Supply when you need something for your dogs. And we already know you're feeding your dog Pro Plan. We know that. I did that survey, and like 85% of my listeners feed Purina Pro Plan because 85% of them have a high IQ and a fine shotgun and a dog that they like to take care of and feed well. And my next survey is going to show that I'll bet you 85% of my listeners also like to put canine athlete products in their dog water, on their dog's food, and wilderness athlete products in their own system. I just started back at jiu-jitsu. This will be, I've been there for 2 weeks. I'm going 3 times a week. I found an academy here in Muskegon, Academy 231 Academy, and I'm back on the mat, and I am full on to energy and focus and hydrate and recover. I mix them both in my, it just so happens, in one of the HTP stores, you can go there and get our plastic, what do you call it, H2O jug. It's got, I'm feeling spry on it. Well, that stuff keeps me feeling spry on the mat. More about that later. But Wilderness Athlete, Canine Athlete, Purina Pro Plan, W Hunting Supply, Garmin, Gunner Kennels, Waltons, Boss Shot Shells, Pike Gear, Onyx Hunt. What else could you need? Well, I could tell you one other thing you do need or you should use if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't take your dog to a pro trainer. Look at the Upland Institute. Don't put it off. I don't care if your dog's in its second season or you haven't had a season. You will gain knowledge of Justin McGrail's training systems with the Upland Institute. They are the 3 courses on there. They're the brainchild of both of us, but they're the mastery of Justin's training. And I don't know anybody who hasn't gained, I don't know what the percentage is, but just a better dog from putting their dog through. Look, we all do better going to school. I could have used more school. Your dog could use more school. Patreon patrons, they can write me because Patreon patrons, they get discounts on a lot of stuff. And like they write me sometimes and say, "Hey, is there a Garmin discount?" No, with MSRP and all the distributors, Garmin can't put a discount out for my listeners. But my Patreon patrons will get in on the runnings. We give away at least 3 collar and transmitter giveaways a year with Garmin. That's right, we do. We absolutely do. We give away a 30% discount to patrons on Waltons. Yep. There's almost always a better Pike Gear deal for Patreon patrons. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. So just after you've checked off the boxes, okay, then get the Upland Institute. That's the last box you check off. Come to the next Zoom room. Oh, and speaking of that, that's just another thing we do. And my patrons are every week, and sometimes twice a week, but right now it's not a lot of progress with my new puppy. We're showing you what I've been doing with the pup. last week was waiting to be fed a little bit, and her progress is getting better, so you'll see that. And I'm working with her on a training table, not getting ready to do anything, just getting her ready to go up and down the table and feel confident on it. And we're going to film that every week on Thursdays when my daughter comes over with my grandkids, and you're going to see the progression and all the things I've learned from the Upland Institute that I'm going to transfer to Zuka. Yeah, that's her name, Zuka. So there. Oh, one other thing. I had a really good meeting last Thursday with Brent Pike and the Wisconsin Sharp-Tail Grouse Society. Now, we heard that podcast, the one we did with Ryan Callahan at the Pheasant Fest. There is going to be a lot more stuff coming up about the sharp-tails. We're going to keep these sharp-tails in their native range, which means from Michigan all the way to the Dakotas, all the way to Alaska, and the Wisconsin Sharp-Tail Grouse Society. We're going to have some events coming up. We're going to have it's going to be exciting. Just, hey, and if you're not a member, look at it. Okay, look at the Wisconsin Sharp-Tail Grouse Society. We need you guys to sign up. Yes, don't say, oh, I'm already a member of PF and RJ. No, you know what? If you've ever wanted to hunt one, what do I always say? Support the organization that supports the bird you want to hunt. So there you go. Go to Wisconsin Sharp-Tail Grouse Society, join up, and get updates on what we're doing next. Hey, everybody, it's Ron Bain with the Hunting Dog Podcast. I'm on the Zoom room with a returning author, if you will, Mr. Andrew Marshall Wayment. It's a little fancy. He goes by Andy, thank God. And I interviewed Andy in 2018 right around after his first book, or the book we talked about was Idaho Rough Grouse Hunting. And he got a hold of me, and, you know, being a podcaster, I love looking for new content, and hadn't talked to Andy in, what would it be? 19, 20, 21, 22, going on 5 years almost, at least 4.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And his new book, I should say new book, came out last year, Idaho Upland Days, Reflections on Bird Dogs, Banner Days, and Other Roadside Revelations. Man, everybody with these subtitles on their books. Can't we just right? Hard for an uneducated guy to read that off. So we're going to talk a little bit about the book because I got a lot of questions. I've got about 3 pages of notes. I'm not going to read like some people will read from the book. We're not going to do that. But when you tell a story about different dogs, I can't help but I got a question about it, right?
Okay.
But then to keep you completely honest, and I know you're a God-fearing man, I have also patched in your brother, Shawn, on this podcast. How do you like that?
Hey, brother, how are you?
Oh, love it. I love it. Doing good, Shawn. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. It's nice weather here today.
Well, we got nice weather, but we still got a buttload of snow.
We got to get Shawn's camera back on if we can, but there we go.
You got me.
So what do you think of that
What
do you think of that little surprise, Andy?
Oh, I love it. He's my best friend, so hopefully he'll be a good cheerleader for me.
You know I will.
So I interviewed Shawn, I don't know, probably in my first year of podcast, I think, Shawn.
It was the first year, Ron.
Yeah, and to this day, a couple of people goes, you remember that story you had with the veterinarian who was doing surgery on his dog on the side of the road? I said, yeah, I remember that one. And then you got a hold of me to talk about your brother Andy's book the first time. And I thought it would be, I like the fact that, you know, there's not that many, I'll call it pairs or triplets of brothers that are all into the same silly ass, you know, hobby that we are. So I have to go to the older brother before we get into Andy and his book. Give us a little rundown of your kid brother growing up and when the hunting started, Shawn.
You know, Andy was 4. What are you, 6 years younger than me, Andy?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yep.
So Andy was a lot younger than me, and but he got the first bird dog out of all of us. I don't know if you heard that story or not. So my dad had.
I did not pick that up.
No, see, my dad had field trial Springer Spaniels, And we had one named Charlie Brown, and it was actually Andy's dog, but I stole it from Andy and took it hunting quite a bit.
He sure did.
So that was childhood dogs when you were living at home under mom and dad's roof.
Yeah,
right.
so Charlie Brown ended up being, Charlie Brown is what did it for me. He was one of the most phenomenal hunting dogs I ever, to this day, hunted with. So he just knew how to. What's that, Ron?
I'm sorry. Where did you guys grow up?
We grew up in Kaysville, Utah, so in northern Utah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Just chucker hunting there, or what were you doing in Utah?
no, back then in the 80s, there were a lot of pheasants. I mean, they killed 150,000 roosters a year in Utah. Yeah, so it was pretty decent back then, but then urban sprawl affected it just like everywhere else. You can't see that many pheasants nowadays in Utah.
No,
But
you can't see them in 43 or 44 of the states in the union.
yeah, I could just sneak out the back door with the dog and go pheasant hunting and kill a limit of roosters with that dog.
Andy, how did you feel about that when your big brother's nabbing your dog? Were you like not fair?
I was kind of a chubby kid, so I was more interested in food at the time than probably hunting. But Shawn would bring home the pheasants, and we got to eat them, and we loved it. It was good stuff. We also had, Shawn didn't tell you this, but there's a lot of valley quail in Utah, and so we had valley quail in our yard growing up. My dad planted all these pine trees all around our house, and we had quite a covey that would hang around the house.
Oh, that's crazy. So you guys, your dad was a field trialer then?
Oh no, he was more, he was a big time outdoorsman, but he was more into big game hunting, archery.
Okay. I got that wrong. Yeah, my apologies.
He
Oh,
did.
he had a lot. Go ahead, Andy.
I was going to say the dog was from field trial stock.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a runaway dog, or because we're gonna get to some of those runaway dogs here in a little bit.
We just let him hang out. He just hung out around the house. It was pretty funny because he never left the yard until we went hunting.
Nice. But I mean, in a Springer shouldn't be a runaway dog, but you never know. When I hear the word field trial, you get a little like, Yeah,
you're right about that.
It might have a little more juice than you want it to. So, Andy, I want you to kind of talk a little bit about, in your book, you wrote, my brother Shawn invited me to go with his dog Jibs in '98.
Yes.
Now, where was that? Did you go to Colorado, or did Shawn come up by you?
That's a good question. So Shawn had just finished vet school over in Wazoo, so Washington State University, and I was just barely starting my first year of law school up at the University of Idaho, which is just across the border, and so. Up in that area is the Palouse Prairie, and there's a lot of pheasants, and I had really kind of just caught the bug at that point, and was excited about the outdoors, and here I am starting law school, a stressful part of life, and Shawn invited me to go hunt with him, and there happened to be this Pheasants Forever plot that we went to, and it had some pretty good habitat, but Shawn had this crazy pointer named Jibs that you'll have to have him tell you the story, but he got that dog from an ad in the paper that basically said wanted crazy bird hunter for crazy bird dog.
That's exactly what it said.
And so he took that dog, and man, she was a firecracker. And so we're hunting this plot, and I never shot at a live pheasant in my life. And she locks up on point, and I kid you not, this roosters start flushing it everywhere. And I had this dumpy old pump gun, a pump 12 gauge coast to coast. I don't know if you remember that hardware store
gun. Yeah.
So hardware store gun. So I missed the first shot, obviously, but I pumped it, and when it swung ahead and dropped that bird and killed it stone cold. And Shawn shot at the other one, knocked it down, and walked to go pick it up. And as he's reaching down to touch it, that sucker took off running. I don't know if you
Yep.
remember that, Shawn.
I remember that. We never got that bird back.
No, we did. We lost that one. So that was my first pheasant, and that was it for me. So I had a hard time focusing on law school after that. So I think I ended up getting my first bird dog just a couple months later. So that would have been October of '98, and I think when I came back from Christmas break, I picked up Rudy from a breeder out of Spokane up in that area. He was a short hair.
Right. I've got them all listed here.
Yeah.
And but you know, I started, like I was telling you before, I think before I hit record, or maybe it wasn't. If someone were to read this book and wanting to get into Upland, you had some really, really bad luck with dogs.
Oh
Yes,
yeah.
he has.
You know, I mean, I think when you're in it long enough, you can get bad luck, but it sounds like your bad luck kind of came early with these dogs, unfortunately.
Yeah, Rudy, we lived out in Deary, Idaho, and we lived probably, I'd say, almost 2 to 3 miles from the main road.
Yeah.
And so we, like Charlie Brown, we just let him run. And I think we had family over, and we were driving to go somewhere, and just let Rudy kind of have the lay of that land. But that's when he got out, and so he was not even a year old when he got hit by a car, and he made it all the way out to the highway and got hit. So that was a heartbreaker. Yeah.
Yeah, that is. I've been on the phone with people who have. I was on a phone with a guy. I was hunting grouse with a friend of mine, and another person that bought a dog for me. I saw him call. He called. I was in a restaurant, in a bar, actually, because that's where I usually am. And I see that he called me. I'm like, well, that's. I said, I just went outside. I would have normally just not called him back. And for some reason, I said to the guy I was with, I said, I'm going to go outside. I'll be real quick. Calls me up bawling, just bawling that. And I could literally, it was like, how little kids cry so hard that you don't know what they're crying about? It was like, oh my God. It just is like, it tore me. It tore me up,
Yeah.
and
Break your heart.
Oh yeah, but now Shawn, you had, besides the one you stole from your brother when you were little, when you had that first bird dog to go hunting with Jibs. Did you get that in Colorado, or were you not in Colorado? No, you were in Idaho.
No, I was going to school at Washington State University, at vet school, when I got that dog, and I lived down the road from some of the best bird hunting country in the world, down there in the Palouse Prairie. And so I answered that ad in the paper and went and picked the dog up. And it was this lady's lap dog, but the husband wanted the dog as a hunting dog. They were both school teachers, and they were about ready to get divorced over this dog because she ran off, and he wanted to try an electronic collar, and she wouldn't allow it. So I took her, and she ended up, oh man, that's how I got my love and, infatuation with pointing dogs, is just that little dog, man. I ended up having to get an electronic collar. I bought one with every penny I had. I bought the old DT system, and that changed her life. And she became probably one of the best pointing dogs I've still to this day had. She pointed everything. So everybody, all of my friends just wanted me to go hunting with them just for the dog.
And did you do a lot of training at that point, or was it just you just had one of them dogs?
I just had one of those dogs. I just took her out, and she'd find the birds. So,
yeah. And then real quick, it sounds like Andy gets Farley. Now, was there some help from brother to brother? Now you had a pointer named Jibs, and Andy gets Farley.
No, but I tried to buy Farley from Andy. I bribed him as bad as I could. How old was Farley? Like 4 months old, 3 months old?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I knew he was going to be a firecracker.
Hey, let me interject there, because there was definitely some influence on Shawn's part there. And the reason why I say that is that he'd always tell me, if you want to get a bird dog, you got to get the sports car bird dog, and he'd talk about L. Hugh pointers as being the sports cars of, so he says, if you want a bird dog, get a bird dog. And so I was very susceptible at that time to influence. And so after Rudy passed, my sister-in-law was she was one of the family members that was up in Deary with us at the time that Rudy passed. So when she went home, she was looking for me in the papers just to see what was there. And she saw this ad about these LU pointers at this local pet store. And so she went over and she looked at them. There were 2 pups, both males. And so she went over and looked at them and she says, you got to see these dogs. And so and we paid, you won't believe this, but we paid $200 for Farrells back in that day.
Yeah. And that would have been, I mean, probably if you picked up an LU pointer, probably would have been probably $500 if you went to a breeder, right? I would guess.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so, and the guy wouldn't give us the papers, but, that because of how they do things at McKee's, but I was able to talk to the breeder. He's actually still a friend on Facebook. And I called him, I called up to McKee's and I said, can I get the breeder's name? And they said, no, we don't do that. And I said, please, I just want to talk to him. I want to ask him about the parents.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, okay. So I called up and, it's the guy's name's Steve Buffett. And I asked him about the parents. He says, oh yeah, they're awesome. These are some of the best bird dogs I've ever seen. And he's into falconry. So he used them for falconry on, like sage grouse and sharp tails. And he says, these are great dogs. So I'm like, I told my wife right then, this is it. This is the dog. So my sister-in-law picked it up and then we went for spring break and picked Farrells up and that. So just within just a couple of months after Rudy passed away.
Yeah. And in your book, I made a note that your brother offered you 500 more than once that day.
Oh yeah.
more than once.
Well, I'll let Shawn speak to that.
Yeah.
I mean, he put on a show, didn't he, Shawn?
Yeah, I bet you. We took him over to this local spot, not about a couple miles, maybe a half mile from my mom and dad's house. And I think he pointed probably 20 hand pheasants. How old was he? 3 months old?
He's 4 months old.
4 months old. And he just was nailing them.
Jesus. And did you, I should probably jump back because I've made jokes on the last time I interviewed Andy. You are not afraid to talk about your missus, okay?
Oh,
and you've had
not at all.
Classic Mrs. Day and from what I read in the book, Shawn's had his moments, but I mean, the book it's more about you and your dogs, but Shawn's in the book a lot. Shawn, did you not teach Andy to shoot a little bit when you were kids, or was this when he was, he just wasn't interested?
No, the thing is he can't shoot double triggers.
Very true.
Well, apparently.
No, but you know what? In Andy's defense, Andy's become a hell of a good wing shooter. I think this year he shot better than me, without a doubt.
So that only took 20 years to come to life, Andy?
It only took 20 years.
20 years. It's got to be cool to have a brother. Now, the other brother, obviously I didn't have any communications with him, is a Jake, right? Is your younger brother?
We have there's 5 boys in our family. So there's a brother in between Shawn and I named Scott. And then we have a younger brother named Robbie. And then we have one named Jake. And they all hunt to some extent, but Scott's more of a big game hunter, and Shawn and I we're the biggest bird brains in the family. So
Absolutely.
It's got to be I mean, I grew up with 2 sisters, neither of obviously which hunted with me in Chicago. And, but the friends I've made over the years, I almost dream like that would be like, if I had a brother, that's what it would be like, Do you guys get into any heated, like, we're going this way, no, we're going that way? I mean, because little brother, big brother, there's got to be a little friction on.
You want to know what we fight about?
What?
Shawn wants to hunt Hans, every time we hunt. And I want to hunt grouse. We don't fight. We're actually best friends. We never fight. So I'm just teasing him.
But
And we always agree where we're going to eat after we're done hunting,
Yeah.
right?
Very true. Yeah, we like to eat. And usually it's tacos. So
yeah, I noticed that you even put tacos in the book. I was like, you lost me. You lost me on the tacos. Sorry.
you're not a fan?
Oh, that's just like, it's like, I'm from Chicago. I'd rather get a gas station pizza than have a taco.
Oh, come on, man.
Oh, yeah.
It's the food of the
Oh
gods.
man, I love tacos.
Andy, your path in the shotgun world. So you had that old, what'd you call? I said not Western Auto. What was the name of that pump gun you had?
It was
Coast
a
to
coast to
coast.
coast. Yeah.
Coast to
I don't even
coast.
know who made it. It's just, but it still has that coast to coast. And I have that gun. I actually inherited that gun from my dad. And I keep it. I never shoot it, but I keep it for memory's sake.
When did the bug hit to get it? Like, I know somewhere in the book you started shooting a red label. Was that your first break open gun?
Yes. So when I was in law school, my dad helped me to get an auto loader, and that was it wasn't the Remington 1100. It was kind of a knockoff on that. It was a Remington, but it wasn't that model.
Yeah.
And I could not shoot that gun worth a damn. That was the worst shooting gun I've ever had in my life. So, and back then you had the plug in, so you could only shoot 3 times.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times I shot 3 times and missed 3 times.
Oh, I could tell everybody. I should have made hash marks as I was reading the books.
Yeah. Well, like I told you, before we started the podcast, is that this book is actually the beginning of my wing shooting and kind of the early times, and so you're getting all the growing pains there.
Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like as you read it. You're like, God, this guy can't catch a break.
Yeah, but the thing about it is I'll say it this way. I get grouse fever so bad. I get excited. And so my heart's pumping so hard that, to me it was hard to focus and to kind of hone that energy. I've kind of gotten past that now. I still get excited. But back then it was like I was JoJo. I always say this. I was JoJo the idiot circus boy with shotgun in hand.
Shawn, were you always the mentor with the guns? Did you get the break opens before Andy, just being older and being out of school and everything? Was that like a trail that you followed?
Yeah, I started also with a Ruger Red Label. I still like the Ruger Red Label quite a bit. I think they're pretty dang good gun, and they don't get a lot of respect, I don't think, but it's one of my favorite over and unders.
I had a 20 gauge. That was my first break open gun. And I shot it well. I ended up selling it to a friend of mine. And when I got a little bit better guns, I started dogging on the red label. But when I got the red label, I was as proud as a peacock,
Yeah.
Not in 12 gauge. I mean, it's almost too heavy in 12 gauge, but in 20 gauge, I could swing that around pretty good, but they just fall open too much. Once you start shooting them, you hit that lever and they just bounce. They just bounce open.
Yeah, that is true about that. I've experienced that.
Andy, or do you still have your red label, or have you sold guns, or are you like everybody else? You just acquire more?
Well, my first, you asked about the first break open gun that I had. It was actually Shawn's 20 gauge Ruger Red Label.
Oh,
and that was the gun that I really, it didn't fit me quite right. And so I had a buddy, just kind of I guess you could say amateur gunsmith that kind of helped me lengthen it a little bit. And I actually shot that gun fairly well. And my son Tommy, I've told this story before, but my son Tommy, the first time he was hunting with a gun, lost that gun in the woods. So I don't have the 20 gauge anymore. I got the 12 gauge right after I actually used the proceeds from the sale of my first book to buy the 12 gauge. And I remember I got to tease you about this because I quote you all the time on it. But I got that 12 gauge, and on Facebook you wrote to me. You said, I used to have that gun. It was like carrying around a dead preacher.
That's a good one.
Heavy as a dead preacher. Yeah.
That's what you said, man. And I still shoot that gun. I actually really like that gun. I shoot it well. It's got cylinder and cylinder, so it's no adjustable chokes. It's just wide open. Shawn gave me the Ruger Red Label in 28 gauge, and that's my favorite gun.
Oh yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah. I've shot that. I don't own one, but I've shot one. Yeah, that's a game changer there.
Yeah. So I took that gun just recently to hunt woodcock, and it was perfect.
Now, where did you go for woodcock, Andy?
Shawn and we've been going the last couple of years to South Carolina. So we go in January.
Oh, okay. You going in the winter? Yeah, okay. After you guys are shooting all of our birds when they go down south.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
And loving every second of it.
Love every one of them. Every one of them. So now you guys always get together, and you mentioned it in your last book, Andy. You guys, and obviously, like you said, you guys are what does Ranella say? You're like nuts on a dog. You just hang together, right? I mean, you're right there. So your early trips would be more like getting to see each other once a year, but now you're making some destination trips and traveling a little bit.
Yeah, we've actually been able to do that. And there was a time where I'd go out and see him in Colorado. We'd go fish together. So in the year before last, I think 2021, we took all of our brothers except for one that got COVID, and we all went to Alaska. So we do spend time. Yeah, we went fishing. So
Wow.
had a total blast. Prince of Wales Island. So yeah, we spend as much time as we can. But not enough. But as much time as we can.
Yeah. Shawn, at the same time, all right, now I'm trying to go down the list of dogs, and I want people to know this book is kind of like it's like a time machine, but it jumps back and forth because you'll refer to a dog that already died, but then you'll go back to a hunt that you guys were on. Well, when you had Farley, your pointer, which like your own brother was lusting after your property, which is, I know you guys must have gone to church because your mom and dad had a church event and you guys snuck out to go hunting in the book. So lusting after your brother's dog is probably not, really good, but what did you have that you saw Farley? What were you hunting with then at that time? Was it still a pointer?
Yeah, I had a setter named Jenny Girl, which was a great dog that I was supposed to give to Andy, and then I liked her so much I bought her to give to Andy, and then I ended up keeping her because I liked her so much. And I probably still had Jibbers at that time, didn't I, Andy? Or
yeah, well, yeah, there was some overlap there for a time. I don't remember exactly when Jibbs passed away, Shawn.
Yeah. So
you went to Colorado, right?
Yeah, I had her for a couple of years in Colorado, and then she got cancer.
So we got a lot of like other than your GSP in the beginning, you guys have kind of diverse now. Like Andy, you're into small dogs that like to roll in the mud, right?
Yeah, we call bobtail bush pigs. Yep.
Bobtail bush pigs. Yep.
Yeah.
I tell people that when they call me up, like, I'm thinking of this, this, and this. I said, well, that's the one you're going to have to give more baths to, guaranteed, right?
That is the truth.
Now, Shawn, do you have a cocker currently?
Well, I used to. The first time I talked to you, Ron, many years ago, I had a cocker, and I don't have her anymore. She was probably one of the best quail hunting dogs I ever had. So I just, one time Mern's quail hunting, she just was flushing birds right down the draw for me.
Wow.
So you have one now, don't you, if I understand?
Yeah. I had one that only made it to 2 years of age, had pancreatic cancer, which is not it wasn't like
That's
a
pretty
genetic
rare.
marker. Yeah, really rare for a young dog. In fact, I could go to your. I don't want to do MedMD when I'm talking to a veterinarian, but when your dog dies, you start Googling stuff,
Oh
and
yeah.
there's articles about Roundup possibly being something like that, a dog could get into that. You ever hear anything like that with early cancer in dogs and
No,
pesticides?
I'm sure that the Roundup's not safe. And if I recall, and I've read the label a couple times, it says after a couple hours you can turn your dogs on to them. Those things aren't safe at all. So
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, no, I've got my second one, and I think she's going to be really. The first one was, I would say, I just let her get totally spoiled. She did hunt for sure. She got her first rough grouse like on her own, doing the work, and shot rough grouse the fall before she died. And I've got literally the day I dropped her off at my vet's, and she took a look at her. We were going to just put her down, and she said, let me open her up and just look, maybe it's something I could remove. Let's just see. She called me up, and I said, no, zip it up and put her down. That same night I was on the phone with Jordan Horick from Wisconsin. I said, find me a cocker. So I could not have a cocker. So you don't have one right now?
no, no.
Oh.
I got two setters, and then I got a French Brittany from the same breeder Andy's got his dog from.
I'm telling you what. So Andy, give me the French Brittany sales pitch, because I judged 3 of them in the last 2 years before I quit judging, and I was pretty enamored with all 3 of them. So,
Well, I'll just tell you, I had Sunny Girl that I wrote about quite a bit. I actually dedicated the book to Sunny Girl. She was not the best bred dog, good dog. Just loved to hunt, and just a great companion. So I really fell in love with the breed. And then I got Misty. Misty was an American Brittany, and so there was a while that I had both American and French Brittany, and it was kind of like the best of both worlds. And
yeah.
when Misty passed away, I really, I did some soul searching on what I wanted in a dog, and I happened to just see a really good looking tricolor on social media, and so I reached out to the guy. His name is Grayson. Oh, got to remember his last name, but anyway, I asked Grayson, where'd you get your dog? And he said, well, this dog's from this kennel out of North Carolina. He says, but if you want a good French Brittany, you need to go to Linda Kira's up in where's she from? Stevensville, Montana. And her kennel is Topper Lynn Kennel. And so I reached out to her, and she happened to have a litter that was coming, and
Yeah.
anyway, and I talked to Grayson quite a bit, and Grayson is a dog trainer. That's what he does professionally. His name is Grayson Geyer, I think is his name. And he said, he told me, he said, this is the best dog I've ever trained, best dog I've ever, and it was Ella. His dog was Ella out of that same kennel. And he had this video, and in the video, he's got a quarter, and he flips the quarter up into the air and into the grass, and he tells Ella to fetch. And pretty soon she goes and fetches that quarter up to him out of the grass. I'm like, dude, I'm sold. So just awesome. But then, so I got Rainey back about 5 years ago. No, let's see, it would have been almost 6 years ago. She's almost 6. And, just so happened that she wasn't she's probably one of the best grouse dogs I've ever had. It took Misty became almost as good, but Rainey was good from day one. And Shawn can testify that she hunted her butt off before she was even 1. She was pointing birds. She just wasn't that great of a retriever. But now I've had her professionally trained, and she's the total package.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And so Shawn got a French Brittany from that line then?
Yes.
Yeah, I got what I wanted though, Ron, is I like to hunt Mearns quail, and I want a dog that really works close and gets their nose to the ground for Mearns quail.
Yeah. And well, is now Shawn or Andy, you use it for different birds, but you think it's just the size of the dog, the fact that it is got a little closer to ground, or do they hunt with their nose down more than up?
Well, you know,
I,
Rainey can do it both. She can do it either way. I mean, she'll get she'll take the scent from the air, or she'll get down to on the ground. Just depends on what it is. But I've hunted with multiple people that have said your dog is phenomenal on grouse, and that's
Well,
primarily what I hunt. But she's just a bird finding machine, and I mean, I'd like to think, maybe Shawn could testify, but I think he's got that dog because of what he's seen out of Rainey.
oh, absolutely. I love Rainy. This year. I shot a male valley quail over a beautiful point on from her. It was, oh man, I still dream about that. She's a heck of a bird dog. I
um,
hope my dog lives up to that.
so yours, Shawn, is a little younger than Andy's.
Yeah, she's not quite a year old. She'll be a year old in April. So I had her out a little bit this year, but I didn't. No, I didn't have. It was a terrible year in Colorado. We just keep having drought year after year, so the birds are really down. So the only
Oh,
really good hunting trips I had was out of state this year.
okay. So you're not doing the Southern Arizona thing for those quail. You're hunting them in Colorado.
Well, no, I went to Southern Arizona. I
Oh,
usually go the last week of the season for a
hmm.
whole week. And what's been happening is we take these dogs down there that run big and fast, and they're running right over the birds, and we're walking into them, and not the dogs finding them. I don't know if you ever hunted Mearns quail or not, but
No,
they hold like
yeah,
a tighter than a bobwhite.
I've heard that, and I've been invited several times down south. I've yet to ever want to drive that far with my dogs or deal with, you know, the terrain, because everybody's going to say, well, let's go get the other two species. And all I want to do is hit the ones in the grass. I don't want to go.
Yeah,
I don't want to go into the cactus world.
yeah, the cactus is bad. It's rough. It's rough down there, but where the Mearns quail is beautiful. That's a great grassland down there.
Well, we're going to probably end up blowing up a few French Brittany breeders after this. It sounds like, because I will tell you that uh, in NAVDA, in the versatile dog world, any dog that points is capable of doing a NAVDA test, because you have to point. It can't be a flusher. And there was never a lot of Brittany's in the system, but then we saw French Brittany's coming in, and heck, I mean, I don't think they almost look like the size of between a Cocker Spaniel and a Springer Spaniel. They ain't very big, but
They're small.
man, the energy that they put into their work, it was quite impressive. I was pretty impressed.
Here's another thing I love about them. This is probably one of the best. So I've got just the one dog that I primarily hunt with, Rainey. And I would notice, and this is no slight on Shawn's dog, because Gretchen is one of the best dogs you'd ever see. She was a English setter, but Shawn would let her out the kennel, and she would charge so fast and so hard that she would burn out, after a day's hunt.
Yeah.
But the thing that I noticed, and I noticed this about Misty too, but American Brittany, but Rainey especially, is that day in and day out. So Shawn and I hunt for a solid week, in October, and
Yeah.
and Rainey's the last dog standing, and it's just because they know how to pace themselves, and so they're not out there, burning up all their energy in one day. They kind of pace themselves and hunt, it's conserving energy. So
Yeah.
so
Well, and
that's
plus, I think a smaller dog, I'm sure there's a smaller dog out there that could burn itself out, but I think that lends itself to a smaller dog too. Bigger dog can run bigger, and yeah, people don't realize when somebody says, I love when somebody goes, oh, I had this dog, he could hunt all day. Well, how many days? I mean,
One day, yeah, exactly.
one day, yeah, give you a great performance. I remember my first trip to South Dakota. Me and my buddy Jeff with two short hairs. We were dumb enough, and I want to cover this with you guys. We always put both. We were so excited to be there, and this would have been early '90s. We were so excited to be there. We wanted to hunt both of our dogs because we wanted them to find pheasants. and we had a great trip. But by the fourth day, neither one of us had a dog. We could have found just as many feathers. They were just worn out. We didn't even rotate them. And in a lot of your book, in this one Idaho Upland Days, Andy, it sounds like you guys tend to cut loose 4 and 5 dogs at a time. Is that,
Yeah,
am I reading that right?
Yeah, we have quite a bit, and it's I guess the more the merrier has kind of been our thinking, but there's been times too where Shawn would bring actually friends' dogs just so that we have more dog power, just because dogs get worn out. So, I mean, we understand that that's not the best use of of a string of dogs, if you will.
Right.
So, but back in the old days, you bet they were all hunting.
Right. A lot of times in your book, you're like, we were with so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so, and you name 6 dogs that you put on the ground. I'm like, God, who does that?
We also have to cover a lot of ground though, too, a lot of ground to cover.
So over the years, now you've got, I'm going to go back to Shawn. You have English setter, and what else you got?
I have 2 English setters and then the French Brittany.
And the French Brittany. And Andy, what do you have right now?
Right now I've got just Rainy, and my daughter has a golden that we're trying to introduce to hunting, but I don't know if she's going to be a hunting dog or not. She enjoys it. So
that's AKI. How do you say that?
Aki. Yeah, Aki. Yep.
That sounds like a first time the kid starts going to the bathroom. I got to make Aki.
Or spitting a loogie.
Well, we just call her the big fluffy dum-dum, but
she's not a bad dog.
She's a good dog. Aki basically is a Japanese word. My daughter's studying Japanese. She may get a degree, I guess, teaching English as a second language. And she's always been kind of in love with Japanese culture. But Aki means fall, and her full name is Akiko, which means fall child. So there is a method to the madness, I guess you could say. So
yeah, I'm a big one on dog names, and I know I've never heard Aki. Never heard Aki.
Yeah, you never have, and you probably never will again. So
give me, and I don't care who starts it off, but I know for a fact I've never had 2 brothers on the podcast at the same time, let alone 2 brothers that I've interviewed separately. What is it? What is it about hunting together that makes you? I know this sounds like a softball question. Is it because you're brothers, or is it because you both love the sport? Shawn, you can go first. You're older. I'll go to the older brother.
Oh, I think we both love the sport, but we're best friends too. And I think we just get out and we enjoy the time together, and we love the dogs and we love the birds. And it's not about a pile of birds at the end of the day. It's more about the experience that we have. Because at the end of the day, we remember the experiences and maybe not so much how many birds we got or how it was. So I think that's where our love came for it, just being outdoors and watching the dogs work.
Andy, what about you? I mean, the same thing, or is it, do you lean more toward hanging out with my big brother, or is it the dogs?
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, Shawn and I we're just 2 peas of the same pod. We absolutely love the upland shooting life. We love the history of it. We love the books. We love the literature. We love the art. We love the whole experience. And so, it's just been a beautiful, wonderful thing that we've shared together, and I'll just say this about Shawn. I mean, people that know Shawn love him because he's one of the most genuine, generous, just beautiful people that you'll ever meet. And so
thanks, brother.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful thing that we get to share together, and so Shawn's kind of my hero, and I just love to spend time with him.
That's I don't want to get choked up, but that's very touching. But I will pick on Shawn a little bit. You did give him Dusty.
Yes. Yeah.
So maybe your big brother's, he's all that you say, but when people read the book, Upland, Idaho Days, Dusty was not like the best gift a brother could give you, it sounds like.
Yeah, you know what? Dusty got kicked in the head by my horse. I had a Tennessee walking horse that kicked him in the head, and after that, the dog was never right again. And I'm like, I think Andy needs this dog.
Yeah, he saw that Farrell's had just passed, and that I was just had the one dog, Sunny Girl, and he's like, you know, it's a good way to get rid of a lemon dog. But you know what? I wouldn't trade it for anything. We had a lot of good memories, a lot of fun times with Dusty. So, you know,
Yeah, Dusty could have been a great dog, I think. So he really just needed lots of birds and lots of work, and he was a good boy.
he was actually a really nice dog, and it definitely was a infamous underachiever, I'd say. You know, he definitely
Yeah.
had the breeding, he had the instinct. He just was hard headed, you know, but at the same time, just as friendly as, and you know, just as easygoing as you could get.
So you didn't hate him, you just got frustrated by him, right?
Well, I just put it this way, you know, Dusty was out doing his thing, flushing birds to kingdom come, and me and Rainey excuse me, Sunny Girl are just getting the leftovers. that's really what was going on. But
Yeah, hey, I remember one time, Andy, you and I were walking up this draw in the Royal McNabb, and not the Royal McNabb. We were down at the trail for quail, and I remember going up this draw and Dusty just slamming on a point. You remember that? And those quail just come flying down, and it was like the most beautiful point he ever had, I think.
Yeah.
Tail straight in the air, head high. And I mean, he had his moments, didn't he?
He sure did. He had his moments of glory, that's for sure. And you know, moments of pure frustration for sure too.
Yeah.
Bustin' Dusty, that's what we called him, you know.
Yeah, Bustin' Dusty. And I made a note of that, like, yeah, great brother gave you the dog, Dustin Busty. Busty.
Yeah, Bustin' Dusty, yeah. Dusty. D. Dusty Devlins was another name we call him. He was just he could be a real pain in the butt, but a lot of fun, a lot of good memories.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that, I mean, people are going to get this from this interview. I think as I got older, and I'm a bit older than both of you, the dogs are always like that connector. But to me, it's just those same, like when you guys get together, you've got to tell them same stories over and over in a car, right? I mean, isn't that what, to me, that's at my age, just telling them stories about them dogs that were good, bad, and indifferent on any day of the week. You guys just got to go over those stories over and over, don't you?
Oh, you know, that's one of the reasons why we do what we do. You know, I mean, I don't know how many times I mentioned in that book the week that I spend with my brother Shawn, but we a lot of times the areas that we're going to, we go to not necessarily because the bird hunting's so great now, but because of the memories that we shared there. You know, it's like every time you step into those coverts, and you remember that place where or what's her name, Geppetto got caught in the trap. It's right there, you know. So we you know, we just have all this collective memory that we share, and it's just a beautiful thing that we've been able to do as brothers. You know, Shawn's, like I said, he's my best friend, and I'd say that probably my best memories in the outdoors are with him in the Idaho uplands. So I hopefully that comes through in my book.
Oh no, it came through, and that's why it was only like four days ago when I was trying to get you pinned down for when we were going to do this, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, you're always talking about Shawn in your book, and I've got Shawn's phone number in my phone from 6 years ago. I wonder if he would jump on, and he couldn't jump on. He couldn't jump on Friday because that's his surgery day, right, at the vet clinic.
Yeah, that's my surgery day.
That's what happened.
That's what happened. So I write Andy this text. It's like, hey, you know, blah 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 blah. Any chance you could come? Because Shawn already told me, he says I could do it Saturday. So I'm like, oh please, Andy, tell me you could do it Saturday, because you don't know your brother's coming on for this podcast.
No, I think it's great. I appreciate the opportunity. You know, Shawn, I've never done this together before, so it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I want you to tell a little bit about, I've got a couple friends like this. You talk about Matt, the guy that is just way better shot than most of us, right?
Oh yeah.
And I'm going to ask Shawn, but I want you to talk about Matt a little bit. Has Shawn hunted? Shawn, have you hunted with Matt enough, or is he not
Oh
there?
yeah, I've hunted with Matt a lot. Yeah, we've hunted a lot together.
Andy, how do you explain his prowess with a scatter gun?
You know, he's just naturally gifted. You know, but I just say he's a product of where he grew up too. You know, he grew up down by Preston, Idaho, and has hunted pheasants from an early time. He actually had bird dogs before I ever did. You know, he had Labrador, and you know, Matt. He'd probably chew me out for saying this, but he actually he lost his first marriage because of his love of hunting and fishing.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, so
that's
he
the guy
just
we need.
loved it.
I think Shawn should have got me Matt's phone number, and I could have got Matt on here too.
Oh, he would have
Yeah,
enjoyed it too. But he's just a
Matt shot
passionate-
more.
Go
He
ahead,
shot
Sam.
more limits of chuckers than anybody I know.
Wow. And that's no, on top of being leg sore and everything else, being chucker hunters, that can't be easy. That can't be easy.
No, you know, if I get one or two birds in a day, I'm ecstatic. And then, you know, you go with him, he shoots his limit every time. You're like, dang.
Right. Well, in your book, what was that one part, Andy, where you got 2 birds and he got his limit of 8? And you're like, you're taking a picture, like I could picture me doing this. Like my buddy's got a game bag of 8 quail, and I got 2. I'm gonna put them on a tailgate and take the picture and not put the subtitle. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, that was a little bit humiliating. That's the first time we ever went to the trail to quail. And so, you know, this guy from church tells me, oh, I know this place. It's just so wonderful to hunt. There's so many quail and over in Western Idaho. And so I'm like, oh, that sounds awesome. And I had Farley, and Farley was just, you know, firecracker at that time. So Matt Lucia happens to be living over in that area. And so I just arranged to meet up with him to hunt there. And man, he put on a show that day. I mean, his dog was great. He had a black lab that was just one of the most phenomenal upland shooting labs that I've ever seen. But I think Matt, if I'm not mistaken, he went 10 for 14. So he killed his limit of quail in 14 shots, and that's a testament to where, you know, the number of birds and all that. But I saw as many birds and I shot at as many birds, and I probably shot 2 boxes of shells to get my 2 measly quail. So yeah, I was a little humbled. I'll just put it that way.
And that's when it's almost hard to be happy for your friend, right? You're like, I'm really happy, and you know it's not luck. You can't. That is not an explanation of luck.
Oh,
right?
that's just skill. Yeah,
that's skill. That's skill.
Yeah, that's definitely skill.
He's a shooter, man. He always has been. He's just a passionate bird hunter too, you know. So,
and you admit, like I think in the book too, like you'd get almost like stage fright. You know, I don't know what the word is. Like
buck fever. I call it grouse fever. Yeah,
grouse fever.
No, you get the jitters on those valley quail.
Yeah.
You get the jitters, brother.
For sure, jitters on valley quail, because it's like shooting in the fast
It's
lanes.
nerve-wracking.
Because especially at that place, I mean, there was just so many birds, and they're getting up all around you, and you know, and just trying to dial in on them is just it's a challenge. So I like to hunt valley quail, but I'd rather hunt grouse. I'd be honest with you.
I've never been out that way, so I've never hunted them. Do they fly out in mass like a bobwhite quail covey, or do they
They can fly out in waves. They can come out in singles, and no, they do not flush like a unified Hun covey.
Okay.
I mean, it's more like it's just bedlam. It's just chaos. They're flushing every which way, and as a young hunter, it can really destroy you real quick, especially once you start missing.
Oh yeah, and you're missing, and then you just talk to yourself like you're telling yourself, God, I can't hit one of these things. I can't hit one of these things. Well, that's why you're not hitting one but when your buddy's just spanking them, my God.
Well, the thing about that hunt though is that Matt and I split up. So I mean, just to tell you how special that place was. So me and Farrell's take one branch, we take one side of the canyon, he takes the other, and I don't see him, and then I don't hear him shooting that much either. Probably I can't hear him because of all the banging the way that I'm doing. But we meet back at the truck, and Matt shows up. I'm like, how'd you do, Matt? Oh, I got my limit. I'm like, it's 10 birds in Idaho, that's a generous limit.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, how'd you do? I said, oh, I got 2. Oh, he's like, oh, good job, Andy. Because he hunted with me before, and
like if it was being recorded, all he was hearing was you shooting across the valley, right? Like he heard you go through how many shells?
Probably, like I said, two cases, no, 2 boxes.
So he's expecting.
He probably heard you cussing too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and that's Shawn will testify to that. When I miss, I groan. So you could hear me groan clear across the canyon, like, oh,
like a bear moan when it dies, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, I've got 2 friends like that. One, I think you were on his podcast, Tyler. He's just a great shot. And I had an old friend that I took to South Dakota. He was kind of like my uncle. Became really one of my best friends here in Michigan, probably my best friend in Michigan. His name was Jerry Bazell, and I talked him into going to South Dakota. This is in the early 90s, and he said, I've always wanted to do that. And Jerry was an old construction worker, crane operator. He had a bay window on him the size of a 9-month pregnant woman, and he walked with a limp. He had a leg broken from a car accident when he was a kid. He walked with a limp, and he carried his gun like a suitcase, just like whoop, 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 whoop. And there's just no way, if you looked at him, you're like, what is he doing out here? That gun came up like Matt Dillon every freaking time a bird came up in South Dakota. He would knock that bird down just from sheer speed of mounting the gun. A guy that couldn't do a push-up, couldn't do a chin, couldn't find his way to the bed at the end of the night, and he could pull that gun up so freaking quick and hit these birds. It was at a point you were happy, and in South Dakota it's party hunting for pheasants. There was days when Jerry basically got everybody's limit. It was just it was a hard pill to swallow.
Huh?
Yeah.
That's humbling for sure.
Yeah. And hunting with those guys is and that's what I like about your book. It's really it's like a diary of your hunts,
Oh yeah. Stories about the hunt, you usually try to tie in a theme to them, but
it like I said, reading your book, I was like, boy, if I could find somebody that would, what they call it, ghostwrite for me, if I would do it, just because like, oh, that story. Every time I read one of your stories, it made me think of a story of similar, there's something that happened to me over there. And the dog stories, I mean, we go through the heartaches and we go through the highs and the lows, but you just wouldn't trade one memory for it, even if they only last 2 years,
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I want to talk is Royal McNabb. So see, now I don't know if you had explained it in your first book, Andy, but I didn't know that there's a story about the Great McNabb and the Royal McNabb. Okay. And I think in my youth, I I made the Royal McNabb one day.
Good for you, man. That's a feat.
Yeah, I was recently divorced and I was out hunting and fishing, and I had a date that night. So, who wants to explain what a Royal McNabb is here?
So anyway, I can tell you. I can't remember the name of the book. Do you remember the name of the book, Shawn, that it came from?
Some with
No, I
Jones,
can't.
with something Jones.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Robert F. Jones.
That's it.
yeah,
That's it.
yeah. So the Royal McBob, that's where he talks about it. But there is an actual book from Europe or from England that
It's
talks
from
about
Scotland, I think. The
Scotland. So the Royal McNabb, the feat in over there was to, and I think it was all poaching based, right, Shawn? Am I
right,
saying
it
it?
was all poaching based.
So basically, to kill a red stag, to kill a brace of red grouse,
You know.
and to catch an Atlantic salmon on the fly, that's the Great McNabb. The
Yeah.
Royal McNabb was to bed the landowner's
Daughter.
daughter.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Yeah.
I mean, come on, that's a great way to top off a good day of hunting and fishing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to
So
do it
that's
all
where
in
that
one
came.
day without getting caught.
So Robert F. Jones, he wrote a story called The Royal McBob, and in that he talks about killing a buck, I think, with his bow, whitetail, and he does it like early in the morning. So he's like, he had just read about this sporting feat that they had over in the UK, and so he decides that he's gonna make up his own. So his is to kill the buck, to shoot a brace of grouse, catch a brook trout on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes and does it, and then to get the Royal McBob, he has to go home and have some hanky panky with his wife. It's a great story.
No,
It's
That's a good story.
that's gonna make it into my hunting camps. I guarantee it.
The Royal McNabb.
I'm gonna have
Yes.
I'm gonna have to find a place east of the Mississippi that I call the Royal McNabb now. Yeah.
Yeah, we love it. And that's our favorite covert in the world. I mean, we absolutely love that place. And it just so happened to be that the day, you're talking about the memories that you have when you're out. And, that particular day is the first time I took Shawn to this place. And he's telling me about this story, that Robert F. Jones wrote, and we're laughing about it. And just because of the great time of hunting that we had that day, Shawn says, this covert is the Royal, from here on out, this covert is the Royal McNabb. And it's had that name since 2000 and is it 3, Shawn?
Yep, 2003.
So we've been
For
hunting
20
that place for 20 years. Yeah.
And without dropping a pin, I read it, and you have there's a picture, but it doesn't tell the whole story. But it sounds like you could find every bird there on one given day if you did the miles.
It's pretty special. I mean, we don't find all the different species there every time, but there have been times where Shawn and I have taken rough grouse, we've taken Hungarian partridge, mostly sharp-tail, and we're always excited about the opportunity to try to get a rough grouse there. Shawn got one. He got his first one ever this past fall.
This last year, yep.
Yeah. So it's
at the
pretty
Royal
cool.
McNabb, at the McNabb.
Yep,
Yeah.
right at the McNabb.
No, Shawn, there's no rough grouse in Colorado, huh? Just blues?
Well, that's not true. There are actually rough grouse in Colorado. There's rough grouse on the border. And so finally the state decided that they would make a trade with the state of Utah, and they actually released them in the middle of the state now too. So
Oh, wow.
there's no season on them, but hopefully they're taken. I haven't heard how they've taken.
Yeah. Shawn, do you ever chase the few? I shouldn't say few because I don't know it to be a fact. Do you ever chase any of the ptarmigan in Colorado?
Yeah, there's a lot of ptarmigan in Colorado, but they're not easy to find. I think I went above the tree line 11 times. So you're at 11,000 feet. It took
Yeah.
11 times for me to find them the very first time I ever found ptarmigan.
Wow.
Yeah, there's quite a few. The problem with ptarmigan is that they're migratory. So it's a white-tailed ptarmigan, and they're migratory. So they'll fly from one peak to another peak, and they can be found from 11,000 feet to 14, above 14,000 feet.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of ptarmigan in Colorado.
Just hard to pinpoint them.
Yeah, it can be one of those where you think they ought to close the season because there aren't any, or the next day you might have your limit after an hour hike.
Hmm. Hmm. In the end of your book, Andy, you talk about what is it, 20? What is it, 20 reasons why I hate chucker hunting?
Yes, sir.
Well, because
All tongue in cheek, by the way.
I get these invites, and I'm sure everybody could say, "Oh, there's spots you could go to where it's not that bad." But is it that bad? Because it sounds that bad when I've read about it and heard about it.
So let me just put it this way. So I've watched your video with Steve Ranella on YouTube a ton.
Yeah.
And how did you like that hike?
I didn't.
Chucker hunting is like 20 times worse than that because it's
Oh,
steeper. Footing sucks. So you're winded when you get into the birds. You're usually winded, and it's a challenge, man. I am the world, and I'll be the first to admit it. I am the world's worst chucker hunter. And I can count on one hand the number of birds that I've killed chucker hunting. So anyway, I do it, but it's not my favorite. And I don't begrudge anybody that loves it, but if I had my druthers, I have other things I'd rather do. So
yeah. I've always felt that people that kind of wax poetically about chuck hunting, they've just never found better birds to hunt in better places.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, I agree. They're a challenging bird, So and my problem is that there's so many other different birds to hunt in Idaho, especially in the early season. And so chucker's kind of like the last show in town.
Yeah.
And usually you're hunting in, steep, snowy, and the birds numbers are, lower in January. So I don't hunt them in the most opportune times. And so mostly it's just a difficult experience for me.
Well, Shawn,
So,
have
'cause
you gone up there and tried chuckers with Andy?
Oh yeah, Andy and I have had some good chucker hunting together. We've missed a lot of birds, and we've gotten some good points on chuckers over the years. One time, a great story. We have a story called where we had a true code brown, and that's where when we were trying to get up to a higher elevation in the vehicle instead of having to hike. So we drove up this 2-track, and it's like straight vertical, and I'm going straight up it. And all of a sudden my truck stalls and we start rolling backwards. And Andy looks over at me and says, "Are we going to be all right?" And I said, "I don't know, brother."
And
That
I'm
was a
like,
true
Code Brown.
It rolled all the way back downhill and it stayed right in the rut. So when we got to the bottom, Andy goes, "Let's just park and walk from here."
Yeah, let's just walk, brother.
I did that once I had a place in Virginia where I still have a home there that we rent out, but I was living there for about a decade working, and a guy that I met really early on, he owns a lumber yard, super nice guy, and some of the bear hunters that he knows that works for him at the lumber yard, bear hunting is really, really big in Virginia, West Virginia border there. He had a spot, and he called me up and says, "Ron, I got a spot to go look for some rough grouse," which is, there's just not a lot of them in that part of Virginia, but they're in some spots. And we had a similar thing happen. I had a 4-wheel drive Ford diesel, too heavy to be taken up in the mountains with that big diesel engine. And we started getting a little bit higher. Of course, we're only talking about a mountain in Virginia is only 2,600 feet, right? but we're starting at
Right.
600 feet. And we're going up this trail. And he's like, yeah, I think this is the right one. And now we're on snow, and now we're on ruts. And I can see like a flat landing up ahead. Like, we got to get to that. And you just know that panicky feeling when the wheels start going like
Oh yeah.
this. And all of a
Yep.
sudden, we got just as lucky as you two did. I just held onto the wheel, and it went backwards down the ruts. It did not hit a damn tree. Just went,
I know. Oh,
oh,
geez.
Yeah, we
oh.
were so scared. So
Yeah,
I got to tell
I mean,
another
I can't
story.
believe it.
I got to tell
Yeah.
another story, and this is probably my moment of shame. But one time, Shawn and I were hunting the same area, and it was Black Friday, so the day after Thanksgiving. And
Yeah.
so we go over to hunt one of our favorite areas in central Idaho. And Shawn decides not to get the hunting license. So him and my little brother Jake they're with me. They're following me and my dogs, and I'm the only one with the shotgun. So as we're hunting, I kid you not, we probably saw 20 coveys that day, didn't we, Shawn?
Absolutely.
It was unreal. Huns and chuckers. And so my dog goes on point. The very first bird gets up. I shoot. I hit it. I knock it down, and we can't find it. And that got into my head. And so from then on, I swear I put on the most inept shooting show ever. And how many times did I miss, Shawn?
Oh, I don't even. It was ridiculous. But me and Jake, we were so rough on you. We'd sit there
They
and
were
laugh
teasing
and
me,
laugh.
just laughing just behind me, like looking over my shoulder, just cracking up. And here I am cursing, to high hell.
Yeah,
I mean, the dogs were pointing these coveys after covey. It was amazing.
well,
It was amazing.
how bad did your two brothers feel about not having a license that day?
Oh, I
Oh,
felt terrible about it.
they would have loved it because it would have taken some of the pressure off me too. But
Right.
they say something like, I can't remember if it was Hemingway that says, trying to shoot with somebody looking over your shoulder is like having a guy, your buddy watch you as you're trying to kiss your girl or whatever. Kind of.
Yeah.
Andy, I actually wrote that down on my notes from your book. Hemingway said, just someone standing behind you while you're shooting is like, while you're looking over is like someone looking over your shoulder while you're writing a love letter to your girlfriend.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I knew it was something like that.
That's fun. And that's what, like, when I read your book, and that's why I'm telling people about it. It spurred a bunch of memories of all my hunts over the years. And I don't think you have to have 20 years of hunting to enjoy it, but it's really such an honest story of, like, I don't want to say, frick and frack out there with a shotgun, but it's not about, it's the day you get a limit is like, there's so few. You just enjoy the journey more than
Oh,
anything.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's never, and Shawn will say this too, but it's not about a limit for me. It's about the memories, and a lot of times the pictures and the stories and just the camaraderie, to me, that's what makes it.
Yeah.
So I'm not real
Absolutely.
big on limits. I if I get a bird or two, I'm happy.
Yeah.
I don't have to kill a limit every time. And those days that you do shoot well, and those odd, not very often days where you do shoot well, they're fun. But that's really not what it's about for me. That's the bird. I always tell people birds are just the bonus.
Yeah.
Birds are the bonus, just being there.
Exactly. I've always said I could probably recite 24 solid misses that I was embarrassed by, more than I could recite 24 hits that people thought, oh my God, what a good shot you are.
Yeah, no kidding.
I always remember them. When I moved to Michigan from Illinois, I got hooked up with a buddy with a German short hair, and I had a German short hair. And we did have some wild pheasants here in southeast or southwest Michigan. And out of the three people hunting, I had the opportunity. There's only two opportunities.
And I had both of the opportunities. And guess what I did on both of those opportunities, right? And I was using a Remington 1100 with 3 shells in it. And I've always, a good friend of mine told me this too. If you ever think it's time to put the pillow over my head when I'm 80 or 90 years old, or however old I am when I'm laying in bed, if I can't tell you that story about missing those birds that day, then I am ready to go. Right? Because that's the laughs and the misses, I think, are, I don't want to say equally, I want to say more important than the hunt.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
Amen. Well said.
And that's what I got. Other than a lot of bad luck along the way, I do want to address something, Shawn, and because I'm very sarcastic, and I figure I'm like the old guy that can say stuff that nobody else can say because they're not that old yet. What were you thinking taking a 4-year-old boy out there and shooting, and he didn't like the noise of the gun? What were you thinking that day?
Actually, that was Andy.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Andy. You took your 4-year-old son out, and he's like, "Dad, too loud. What were you thinking?"
What was I thinking? I was thinking, man, we're into birds. We're having a blast.
That's exactly what you were thinking.
It was a perfect storm. I mean, my son had never been hunting with me ever before. So this is the first time I'd ever taken him. I didn't know at the time that he, at the time we later found out that he's probably is on the spectrum, I'd say, so, and maybe had Asperger's at the time, but I had no idea that he had any kind of sensitivity to loud noises, or anything like that. So I really didn't know what to expect. And I thought, when I shot the gun the first time, at the first place that we hunted, I thought, okay, that's I shot the gun, he cries, and I thought, oh, it'll be okay. It's going to be okay. So then I take him to the Grouse-Katir Ridge, and I'll tell you what, there was a pile of birds on that hilltop, on that ridge. And it was just a perfect storm. I mean, Tommy was there. We're hiking this old logging road. The dog's, busting Dusty's kind of doing his thing, flushing birds all over the place. And there's still enough birds for me and Sunny Girl, to get points and to get shots. Yeah. And it was like, boom, boom, boom. I had 3 birds on the ground, and Tommy's bawling the whole time. So I was 1 bird away from getting my limit on that day, but I just decided, you know what, that's enough. So that my son, that was probably only about 10 minutes between those birds. So it wasn't like I wasn't torturing my kid.
Okay. You weren't going like, okay, let's go to another spot. No, you just happened to hit this.
We hit the mother lode. Yeah. And that's why that place is named Grouse-Katir Ridge. Just, after that experience with Tommy, but he loves it now. I tell this story before, but he was hunting with Shawn and I this year, and I wrote about that place called Tommy's Covey where we got into Huns that one time in the book, and we're hunting that same spot named after my son, who happens to be carrying a shotgun with me. And hey, it's been a couple of years since he would do that, but anyway, Rainy Girl goes up over this ridge and starts to drop down into that very draw where I lost my shotgun in the story. Oh, and she's birdie as can be. And I'm like, I look over to Tommy. I'm like, Tommy, get ready. These birds are getting up. And this big covey just explodes, about 20 Huns. And I didn't expect Tom to shoot, but I got my gun up, boom, boom, pulled the trigger twice, missed. I flock shot, missed twice. But at the same time, I hear Tommy shooting, and I hear him squeeze the trigger twice, and no birds drop. I just looked over at him, and we just start laughing, and I yell, "I'm missing birds with my son." It was awesome. So that was kind of the full circle, I guess you
Yeah.
could say, of the the whole Grouse-Katir experience with him. But to be able to shoot with him and miss birds with him. But anyway,
No, those stories are just like, I think what everybody, like we've said it a bunch of times, it's those stories that keep us going. I mean, you could say it's the dogs, you could say it's the camaraderie, but in the end, it's those stories that you'll tell. You and Shawn will be in the truck somewhere driving to another spot, and you just rehash those old stories. That's at least I can tell you
Yep.
from I'm 65, and when you guys are 65 and 69, whatever you are, or 70, you'll be laughing about the same damn story over and over again.
Yes, we will.
yeah.
So no, I really enjoyed it. It's like I said, I don't want anybody to think this is a literary piece on the biology of Idaho upland game birds. This is one man's story about, I wouldn't say struggles, but about what it's really like hunting. It's like feast and famine days when you might as well had a blindfold on when you were shooting.
Yep.
Amen. Yeah.
And tacos, which again, we'll have to digress. I'm not the taco fan, but maybe you got better tacos in Idaho than I do. I don't know. Maybe.
Oh, they got great tacos in Idaho.
Yeah. Some of the best.
What's your guys' plans for this coming year? Now we're in that lull of the season where we're looking forward to next year. What do you guys have planned?
We're going to go to Idaho again. I'm going to go the 1st of October for 10 days probably, and then a lot of local stuff. And then we're going to go back to South Carolina. And I think we're going to do a cast and blast this year. We're going to do a 3-day woodcock hunt and then fish for some redfish with the fly rod.
No.
Yeah.
With the fly rod. Yeah. Now both of you fly fish too, correct?
We do.
Absolutely.
That's never caught me, for some reason. And I wouldn't say I'm a consummate grouse hunter from Michigan, but more of my friends in Michigan do both than I do. If the one time I tried to learn how to do a fly rod, I was on a dock and I snapped myself in the face with the leader or whatever the last part of the string is. I went down to the dock and said, I'm never doing this again. So, I would do it with you if it was a bobber involved. Or what do you guys call them?
They do have bobbers for fly rods. They're called strike indicators.
Strike indicators.
Yep.
Somebody should make a T-shirt that says it's not a bobber, it's a strike indicator.
Oh, I'm sure they
That's
have
a
one.
great one.
Yeah, it's good. We always say it's two sides of the same coin. I love it just as much, and I'll tell you what, it's a long time between bird seasons, so
Yeah,
it's a good thing to do.
When you can get together with your brother, it's like, why not have all the same? Is there anything else you guys do, like build ships in a bottle together or anything, or is it just bird hunting and fly fishing?
No, we talk a lot about the books that we read. We both like upland literature, so we might reread a story and hash it out to each other. And Andy's pretty good about, well, what do you think he thought about when he wrote that, and maybe do some research into this and that. We talk a lot about that on the phone.
How often you guys chit chat on the phone?
Well, we text
probably
every day, yeah.
Yeah, we text probably every single day.
Yeah, I got that probably once or twice a week.
Yeah. I got a buddy that I would consider the closest thing I have to a brother, and he still lives in the Chicagoland area. And when COVID hit, he was working from home, and I had to retire. And I would say, this is what, 3-year anniversary basically of coming up on the COVID shutdown. And I'll bet you in 3 years, we've probably only not talked about maybe 30 days out of, let's say, 1,000 days in the last 3 years. There's only been about 30 days we didn't talk. And we do the same thing. We plan a hunt, we talk about a hunt, and then we talk about some of those Royal McNabbs.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I really appreciate you coming on. Andy, your book, Idaho Upland Days, I would recommend anybody to get it. I'm going to give that warning that I gave earlier. If you just got your first bird dog, you might get a little scared because good and bad luck comes with everybody. And Shawn, as a vet, you've probably seen the best and the worst with, dogs and bad luck with dogs, right?
I really have. Yeah. I've really seen some terrible stuff bird hunting. So,
And but not to get anybody to ever not do it. I would say get the book and find out what you're gonna. If you are brand new, get the book and find out what you're going to be doing in 20 years together. And if you've been hunting with somebody for 20 years, get the book and write your own. How's that?
amen.
Amen. Yeah, I wish more people would, because it's just so fun to have those stories. And that's the kind of stuff that the literature that I really love. I don't so much care for the where to, how to kind of stuff. I want to read a good story, and it's just such a beautiful way of life that we have, and there's so many adventures and misadventures, and I'd hate for that to not be recorded for me. For my kids, even if it's just my kids that are reading it, it's still a worthwhile endeavor for me to write down those things. So I'm glad that people, when they read it, like you tell me, it reminds me of my own experiences.
Yeah.
Or they say, or I felt like I was there with you, and that's why I do it. That's why I write the things that I write, is just to hope that people will connect with it.
Well, I connected with it. And I appreciate you hollering at me and sending me a message, and I'm like, hell yeah, let's do another one. And I'm glad I had the forethought of bringing on your older brother for, just to keep the story straight. Shawn, was there did Andy deviate from the truth anywhere in this podcast?
No, he shot it pretty straight, Ron.
Boy, you guys are close, aren't you? I think my buddy Roof would have threw me under the bus at least once.
Yeah, he's my best friend. So well, he better have
my best friend too.
I've told people, and I think my buddy Steve has said it several times on his podcast. I said, if a mom or a dad thinks their kids are their best friend or vice versa, they never had one. So two brothers or two friends, best friends are, it's an undescribable bond. And having both of you on here makes me think about my next trip hunting with my best friend.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Ron. It was great to visit with you again too.
Hey, Shawn, would you consider coming on? How are your Thursday nights? I know you said Friday's your surgery day. Are Thursday nights open for you sometimes?
Yeah, I'm actually Thursday's a good night for me. Thursday's my day off, so I usually shoot shotguns Thursday, and Thursday night I'm just hanging out.
Well, I have a patron page that people who listen to podcasts, and I make fun of them all the time, and they've become a really close knit group. But there's a lot of them, but about 30 or 40 or so come on once or twice a month on a Thursday night. And I am sure I would love to have you come on some Thursday night, and you're going to have to filter all the questions of being a vet. But I mean, you've been at it, and you're a vet, and you're a gun dog person. And if you wouldn't mind sometime with a little planning, if you'd come on a Zoom room some Thursday. And
sure, I'd love to. Yeah, just let me know.
All right, I'm going to hold you to that. Andy, I'm going to hold you to, what's the next book? Are you working on another book or anything? Or
I am. Yes, I've got one that's about 3/4 of the way done, and it's kind of going to be the, maybe the last one that I do on upland game hunting. I might do another one, but it's going to be called Grouse Fever. So,
okay.
Yeah, and it's going to be about hunting grouse.
There's going to be
not
a lot of
grouse, but all the species.
Blindfolded shots.
Well, grouse fever, like by that I mean like buck fever, just the pure excitement that comes from it, and Idaho is kind of a special place because we have 5 different species of grouse. So it's going to be kind of focused on hunting the different species of grouse, but along the same lines of what I've done in my last two books, more just stories,
Yeah.
about the hunts. So I don't do that weird how-to kind of thing. So
you get the next one published, and we'll get you back on here and talk about it.
Okay, deal.
All right, guys, I can't thank you enough for coming on. And this is actually going to go out Sunday, so let your friends know that we'll be chatting on the airwaves. It'll be out there for Sunday afternoon.
So you're talking about tomorrow?
Ron, thanks.
Wow.
Yeah, this Sunday.
Very cool.
All right.
Thanks again, Ron.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Take care, buddy.
All right, be good.
See you later.